a podcast where Kayla, Jared, and Noah discuss, review, and argue endlessly while indulging in everything comics. Join us at the Phantom Zone.
So that was our good friend Sarah.
That was Sarah. I thought that was a computer that was possessed by the devil.
Oh, okay.
Jeez. No,
Hello, Sarah.
that's our good friend Sarah. She was really excited about the podcast and then sent that to me, and I was like, I'm going to put that on the podcast, and I don't care how you feel about it. So, yes, welcome to the Phantom Zone. Today we are talking about superhero teams. Yeah, teams that stood out to us. Teams that mean a bunch to their respective companies.
It's exciting. I honestly feel like people, they don't really talk about it as much as they should. In a weird way, like when I go on YouTube, you see all these lists for like best characters and top, and when you think of comics, you think of superheroes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's weird is that I think there are more characters that have had their stories fleshed out in team books than in individual books. If you think about it, you have like 9 or 10 Marvel or DC major characters that have ongoing titles. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, just on the DC side, right? But how many, there are any given time like 60, 70, 80 active characters within a universe. And most of that happens in team books.
Yeah, just look at Justice League Unlimited, the TV show.
Yeah.
They had to make a separate Justice League show just to show all the other characters.
The entire roster. Absolutely. So yeah, I want to just sort of begin by throwing actually, maybe we should start this way. Let's talk about who we're not going to talk about on the episode.
That's pretty easy because we're not mentioning any of the big teams that you're thinking of.
Exactly. We're not really going to spotlight it's like the three. I feel like the teams that have just dominated comic books, the Justice League, the Avengers, and the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Good teams.
Very good teams.
Amazing. But so we got a few reasons. One, those teams definitely all deserve their own episodes. We're going to do deep dives on all of them. So if you're fans of any of those, definitely wait.
It'll happen eventually.
Yes. But also for me, and I think we disagree about this a little bit, is that in some ways they're almost like not teams now, or there's a feeling of that where they've like become these like franchise.
Oh, they are
characters
for sure. Franchises.
Yeah, it's like almost like a brand.
Yeah.
Well, within the universe, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, it's the Justice League, and literally everyone on the planet knows like the prominent members of those teams and etc.
So I actually think this is a great place to sort of mark the difference between Marvel and DC a bit, and the way that this has kind of worked. I won't deep dive the Avengers, I promise, but there is for a long time, the Avengers was sort of a crew of characters, and they were you could kind of be like, okay, this is who's on the Avengers, and it was distinct from other big parts of Marvel. So you didn't have Spider-Man or Hulk or the X-Men in there, with a few exceptions. And then Brian Michael Bendis did a thing called the New Avengers, and basically invited all of the characters that classically hadn't been Avengers, like Spider-Man, Wolverine, Luke Cage, onto the team. And it really, for good or bad, exploded, I think, the Avengers into more of like a kind of brand. And when you said, okay, this is the Avengers team, it really didn't narrow anything down.
Yeah.
In the same way in DC, Justice League, you don't when you say, oh, who's the Justice League, you might think of core characters.
Like the seven.
Yeah,
the seven
exactly.
big
That's what I
ones.
was thinking.
But you also aren't excluding anyone. If you're DC and if you fought crime with some power, you are in the league as at least a reserve member.
Oh, yeah.
This is
You have one
true.
of their little comms, and it will beep if they really need you. Yeah, and I think a good thing for those teams, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is that it does give an opportunity for characters that either don't have their own run in comics and only kind of show up in those teams.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of times, most of the characters do have their own runs, but a lot of them don't. So, I mean, you only get to see them in those team-ups whenever the story serves for them.
And in certain ways, they're probably better that way. We've probably, I think we've talked about this before. There are certain characters you kind of only expect to happen in a team book.
Like, I don't want to read a solo run of Martian Manhunter, but put him in with the other Justice League members. And I'm like, I'm interested in you. Yes.
And
true.
we disagree about that. but
I think like Black Canary. So like I don't
like Black Canary a lot.
I like her too, but I don't know if she has had her own run and it was okay.
Yeah.
But if it's not with Green Arrow or training the Teen Titans,
I could take her in Green Arrow or in the
But you take any of those characters and there's going to be 15% of the audience that says, "Oh, I'd love but that's only 15%. Whereas you take a character like Batman, and 95% of you're like, yeah, he needs his series.
Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, and even that 15%, I mean, once they do get that run, a lot of the times it's a one-off, which I think, to kind of side note, I think that's the best for those characters that aren't the pinnacles of each of those universes. I think one-offs are great. So like Power Girl has some great, one-offs.
Miniseries.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Miniseries, but I don't think, I think they try to bring Superwoman back, and it just didn't go so well. I don't think she even has any comics coming out anymore. Don't know what happened with that, but I read the first trade, and I was like, you go back with like the Superman and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It just Cyborg is another example of that for me. I read his run. I've tried to like him on his own, but if you think about it, who are his villains? Aside from Grid and stuff like that, I mean, his villains
that he even has that one. It's surprising.
Yeah,
which is
because it's rare to have those B characters have a discernible
their own
foil
rogue gallery.
Yeah.
Well, even then, Grid is really kind of a Justice League villain or a Teen Titans. He
doesn't make the top 100 of most people's lists.
No, I mean he could do some damage, but like I said, I mean you're just trying to create this whole universe for this character that has been a part of another kind of universe. It just it can get a little messy.
And honestly, there are characters where I want them to act in a certain way that works in a team book. That if it was Guy Gardner. I want him in teams because he is exactly. Because Guy is an asshole, which is why Kayla doesn't like.
Not my type. No,
but this is. I think we agree in this way, which is that I don't want to read the book of Guy being a gym coach asshole for 40 issues.
Nope,
just him as a protagonist. But I love him in the Justice League.
I would.
He's in that 15%. Well, is there a character we could all agree that it's like, I love them in a team book, but the thought of them in their own series?
I mean, how do you guys feel about Cyborg?
Oh, that's probably fair.
Yeah, I think I don't
prefer him in the ensemble.
Yeah, it's not that he's not interesting. Yeah. It's just I don't like it.
But to me, the difference there is that with Cyborg, it's almost like there's not enough. It feels like maybe they haven't fleshed out that character enough or something like that. So who knows? But there are to me, there are certain characters like Guy Gardner where he's actively doing shit that would annoy me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what I mean? So with Cyborg, I can't think of a thing that I'm like, oh, I don't like that he just hasn't.
That's true. So his one-off or one shot would be an exploration of his character, and you're like, that's kind of necessary, actually, because I don't know enough about Cyborg. But with Guy Gardner, it's like, I know enough, and I hate it, so please stop.
Yeah. But in team books, there's often somebody who's a dick, and why? Well, because you need the internal conflict to be created.
You need to have all those archetypes.
I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, my favorite part about comics is, shut up, is the relationships that the characters build with each other. So I feel like team books are the perfect chance to do that.
Oh, yeah. And you get to see these characters interact maybe with characters they've never interacted with before, never thought they would.
I'm pretty sure we said this exact sentence in the crossover episode last time. That's why I was like, oh no. But it's so true for team books too.
It is true. And there's some major differences because I think with an event, it's some circumstance that a bunch of characters are all responding to, like red blood cell or white blood cells to an infection. They all just surround that thing. Whereas with the team book, it's like they've decided they're a family in a sense, or something, or business partners. They've decided to get together for undisclosed amount of time in case something happens or something like that.
It becomes kind of sitcom-y almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is a good kind of distinction between them. So big crossovers are, they don't necessarily team up because they were already a team up. It's like,
there's just one thing that's bringing them together. And then once that one thing is taken care of,
then they kind of just go their separate ways.
Yeah.
And
it's like, look, I don't like you guys. We're different kinds of characters.
You're
but
pointing at us.
Well, I'm using you as an example. But Dr. Doom has turned all the monkeys into goblins, and we've got to come together to stop that. But as soon as we get the monkeys back to normal, I never want to look at you again.
Goodbye.
Monkeys are already kind of close to goblins.
You're right.
What?
That's why Dr. Doom is a genius.
If I showed you a picture of a monkey and a goblin, you telling me you couldn't tell the difference?
No, he's saying he'd want to kill both.
Oh my God.
I think.
What?
Yeah.
Anyway,
back to the point. So the idea is they've come together for, they're just staying no matter what happens, and in the meantime we get a nice superhero soap opera, which is kind of another. If that's the kind of reading you like to do, you really can't beat. I think.
Well, I mean, drama is an appeal to everyone, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, team ups and team books and kind of like one-shoot team up books in different varieties, what have you. They are for that. I mean, it's all to see these characters interact with all these different characters. And sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes literally in the comic, they can't work together. And then that's the story that unfolds with it. So I think having team books is important because it also builds on that character. It expands their universe in a different way. And it's also really cool to just see Swamp Thing pop up in a Wonder Woman book.
Absolutely.
Because it's just so far out there. And if it's executed fantastically, maybe some more Swamp Thing fans would come from it.
I mean, so I'm glad you mentioned the Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman thing. Because to me, there's this issue where what's a good team book for me? It's actually an ensemble cast, and I really don't like. And this happens on both Marvel DC side, where there's a team book, and they just sort of make one character the main character.
Yeah,
and that's what is really good about this is that you get when it's done well. No one person is the focus. It's their collective. It's the relationships. It's not just an excuse to make Iron Man or Wolverine or Superman. Like, look how amazing they are. They dominate even around, like, poor Hawkeye, right? Like, even when,
Yeah, I think, so you're not saying, like, making them the leader, but making it an Iron Man comic disguised as a team up.
Exactly. There's something really annoying and also a huge missed opportunity because if you're a writer and an artist, for that matter, and you're like, oh, I get to write all these characters. How wonderful. Let me highlight Scarlet Witch or Black Widow or something like that. Because that's the only time you can do it because those characters don't really get to support.
Well, yeah, like specific story arcs in those ensemble things. But highlighting a character is okay. Absolutely.
But then what I'm saying is that like you instead decide I'm going to just make this like Iron Man's book.
Yeah.
Write Iron Man if you're going to do that. This is the time when you actually get to like, Ant-Man gets a few lines and that's,
I do like the differences though between the kind of the three teams that we did mention. So Justice League, Avengers, and X-Men. I mean, they're all super different. They all have the same goal in mind with the exception of X-Men. I mean, X-Men wants to protect people and humanity and all peoples. And
Xavier.
Yeah. And especially to kind of advocate for their own rights and to show, hey, we're people too. Like,
well, and the thing about the X-Men, I think is worth noting and why it's hard to just think of them as a team, because in a literal sense, you have the X-Men, which is a team, but those comic books in it's like anthropology. It's like the entire world of mutants, and X-Men comics often are as much, if not more, about mutantdom at large as they are about the inner workings of this particular like peacekeeping strike force.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, and I think X-Men kind of stands alone in that because there's not really another team up or another comic necessarily that does that. So they take place in this bigger universe. You have the Avengers going on where they're dealing with Galactus and all this stuff, and some of the X-Men might be in there, but most of the X-Men comics deals with just the X-Men, just the mutants, just what's happening. And Xavier's manor.
Yeah, no, it's to compare the two. That's really interesting because it's like with the Avengers, it's like they exist because a warlord is trying to destroy all the oxygen in the atmosphere. This one awful thing, or these kind of crises. X-Men exist because of the relations between mutants and non-mutants. It's almost like the difference between fighting terrorism or fighting poverty.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's a good example.
I think one of the things that can get annoying to me in team books, though, is that if the team's been around a long time, say I go to the store and I want to pick up an X-Men comic and I'm excited to read about my boy Cyclops, and then I pick up the comic and he's not in this one or the next one or the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel
that's
like
true. I mean, yeah.
it feels contrary to the team that I ended up picking, because this team has gone through many evolutions. Like, the main cast and roster has changed. But that's why I feel like the Justice League has that core 7. And I feel like if I want to read about them, I know that if I pick up a Justice League book that they're going to be there.
Yeah.
So I feel like in team books that doesn't have that consistency, I'm like, this is a gamble. I have to do research beforehand.
Yeah, I do think that is another good point. So Justice League, I think, is really good about keeping their core team.
Yeah.
So take out Martian Manhunter, Cyborg's there now. He's been there for years now. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Hal Jordan is out of it now, but you still have Green Lanterns in it. So you just
the core team still feels like the core team. In
a
sense,
yeah.
Even if you have a few substitutions.
Yeah, I mean, they never really diverge from that, which is good. I mean, some people don't like it. Don't read it then. But with the X-Men, that's very true. There's so many characters and you never know. And there's so many titles too.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the amount of titles that are out now.
I have to do so much research before I pick up an X-Men comic book.
Yeah, like I was reading the Jean Grey series, the new one that had come out before Phoenix Resurrection, and I loved it. But it was so different. I mean, you had Beast now is also a magician. Like, he's a sorcerer.
What?
Yeah, which is it's really cool. I like it a lot. But then you'll pick up another one, say like X-Men Blue or Gold or Red or Black.
Yeah.
And he's not that. And I know it's with time differences, but it's just so different from one another.
And these characters these different, I guess, franchises or team franchises all have a different kind of ecology and dynamic and everything. I think just to compare the Avengers and Justice League real quick, one of the Justice League was able to do that because their most popular characters are also the Justice League core 7.
Yeah.
On the Marvel side, the Avengers were not an assembly of the most, well, at the time, the origin in 1962 they were, where the best-selling characters. But pretty soon, like once you hit the 70s, Spider-Man, the Hulk, Wolverine later on, these were Marvel's top-selling characters, but they weren't Avengers.
Yeah.
And Avengers had become its own thing, and it wasn't just like the 7 top-selling heroes or something like that. So just different worlds. And you mentioned, I mean, the X-Men's funny because that team changed really quickly right out of the gate. Giant size X-Men, that first, like Wolverine and Storm and Colossus, in a lot of ways, when the X-Men came onto their own, that's like it was a completely different team than the one Stan Lee created.
Yeah.
So they've all just had very different histories or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they just have so many characters. I mean, so does Justice League and Avengers and X-Men. And I think that is a good point. I think what Marvel does differently than DC is DC doesn't usually diverge from their Justice League. Like we've said. I mean, you just look at any type of Justice League comics and you have some version of that character.
I'll say even alternate versions of the Justice League, they're parallels to the main actual Justice League members.
Exactly. And that's cool if you like that. If you like consistency.
Consistency.
Yeah. And then, but what Avengers and X-Men does is it does give the opportunity to see all these other characters that actually might be popular outside of Avengers, and they put them in there. But I mean, I think that's a good difference between the two, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, Justice League is this monolith where it's like the nucleus of DC and everything else is going to sort of connect to that. Whereas I think with with Marvel, there's these two competing franchises that are equally big and could never eclipse one another. So it's like Avengers could never be the center of the Marvel universe totally because you have the X-Men and vice versa. It's much more like political part, like the Democrats and the Republicans, only you like reading about it or whatever.
only that you usually like both of them.
Oh, and they're good.
Yeah.
They're good. Yeah. The teams we're going to focus on, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, are, I think, have a more coherent structure and have a more specific view. And they're not just the center of their universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have their own linear stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they kind of sprouted from these main teams, essentially, or they're different types of teams and stuff like that. Yeah.
I would say there's one more thing to mention, which is that there's, or at least one more, you guys might have more stuff, but there's like these three, in my head, reasons teams exist in the first place, and they have different levels. So one is the editorial thing. So teams started, I think that they mentioned this as much, at least with the Avengers, because it sells better. Because if you can have these comic book characters that are interesting, but if you can have a cover and it's got, Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, well, you're just going to get all their fans.
From a marketing standpoint, it's like more bang for your buck. Absolutely. Do you want to read about one guy or 70?
Yeah, I mean, if you have, 20% of fans are Wonder Woman fans, and then 20% are Batman fans, and blah, 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 you get all of those readers reading that because of that one character. So I think, money-wise and financially.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So and then there's the ones we already mentioned, which are what we like about reading team books. That's sort of like the audience feeling. And then the third is that the in-story reasons the teams exist. And those are various, but I think usually it's like, well, sometimes something attacks the Earth and Superman can't.
You just can't do it alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Getting into specific teams, there was a thought process before I landed on the one that I did. I kind of stole it from Noah. Actually, he gave it up, so it doesn't count. But I really wanted to do Defenders because I still really love and am inspired by those like Marvel Netflix shows, and I feel like the Defenders part of that show was really good. Fight me. But the roster for Defenders throughout their like comic history was so changeable that I would have to go issue by issue describing who is in the Defenders now, who left.
Yeah, there's no clear who's in it.
Exactly. And the team that I did end up choosing also is kind of changeable, but I feel like the Teen Titans has been a little bit more concrete in terms of roster and popularity. So I'm going to do a little mini deep dive about the Teen Titans. The first appearance for these characters, like in an ensemble form, was in The Brave and the Bold. I think it was number 54. And it was Kid Flash, so Wally. It was Robin, Dick Grayson.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And then Aqualad, which I think it was Gareth. And then a couple of issues later, they introduced Donna Troy, and then that's when they were officially dubbed the Teen Titans. So with her introduction.
Interesting. I forgot that was like the original team, or like when they came together.
Yeah.
It's an odd combo.
Right? It was just them four, but I know. The one that people remember specifically didn't happen until later. Because Teen Titans kind of fluctuated in popularity since its introduction. It's been canceled and redone many times. But
that's a good point unto itself.
Yeah, this is kind of an inconsistent team book in terms of, is it happening right now? Oh. But it was skyrocketed into, like, I guess, consistent popularity when Marv Wolfman and George Perez, it's the same people that did Crisis on Infinite Earth, when they introduced Cyborg, Starfire, Raven, and Beast Boy with Robin.
Heck yeah.
Yep. I know, right? I'm like, oh, this is the Titan show that I loved growing up. That got me into comics. Yeah. So I was excited to read that. That dream team kind of skyrocketed the Titans into like popularity. And fun fact, the Judas Contract is the most popular storyline from that time. And that's the one with Tara betraying the team to Deathstroke. People remember that.
It's so good. I mean, just even the writing and how kind of not adult it was, but it was. Yeah. I mean, compared to the run, it was just...
She's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, she's a little crazy.
It was really smart. This demure character, and they make her this... I think she smokes at one point, and they're like, oh, this one smokes. She's not a normal girl.
Look how bad she is.
She had to impress Deathstroke. Yeah.
Deathstroke's daughter has been on the Titans before too, in and out.
Ravager.
Yep.
Rose Wilson. I love that character.
Yeah.
But-
I could sit here and list all of the people like Hawk and Dove. I mean, like, there's been so many swanning in and out of the team.
As most team ups are. But
Yeah,
you always have
exactly.
those central characters.
Exactly. And the central character for me and all of the Titans are the Robins that lead
Cyborg.
the...
Oh,
No, boo! It's the Robins that lead the way.
I like how you find a way to talk about the Robins.
I didn't do this on purpose. Again, you wanted to do Teen Titans, then you're like, no, I'm going to go with something else. And I was like, well, if that's free, yoink.
Teen Titans must be done.
Yeah, and that was after I did the research on the Defenders, going like, well, this roster is so inconsistent that I don't even feel that I could talk about this team because I would have to pinpoint a specific issue.
It's that the Defenders in the way you're talking about, I think is very true because it's just conceptually different. There's like this brand name that they used, but the team, it's not just different characters, it's a different kind of team.
Yeah.
Whereas with what you're talking about, it's like even when the rosters changed, the sort of concept of the team has very much stayed the same.
Yeah, exactly. They're typically the younger. Most of them are sidekicks
It's
to
a sidekick
bigger.
team.
Yeah, exactly. They're sidekicks to the bigger teams or the bigger heroes that were like, we can do it too. So they just went off. Titan's Tower.
I think it's such a cool idea. And it's kind of baffling whenever like what you said, whenever they've been canceled, come back, canceled and come back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, these characters are huge parts to these big superheroes.
Yeah.
And for them to have their own team is fantastic. They even created their own rogues gallery and everything.
Yeah.
Like,
And sometimes you feel like, oh, they created this thing for sales or editorially, and that happens. But in this case, it's like, oh, this would need to happen.
Yeah.
You think the teenagers are going to want to hang out with basically their dads all the time? No. They're going to go hang out with each other. They're going to form a gang of friends.
well, and also to point out, so whenever you read like the Flash and Batman and all that, those characters aren't always in it.
That's right.
So what are they doing in their spare time?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, hanging out in a tower shaped as a T.
It's so smart to have come up with this thing where it's like, oh, this character who was really just a foil for the character, like the sidekicks, that the characters the sidekicks were in reference to. I don't know how to say it. Anyway,
Good job.
yeah.
We got the gist.
So they go from being, okay, this is a plot device in a certain way or a way to flesh out a character to no, it's old enough. These characters are rich unto themselves. Let's put them together and make a team out of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw it to you because you also have this cool moment that you identified where Teen Tartans is a Scottish a superhero team where it's just all these different clans come together.
We're not talking about them this time,
Have
though.
you seen Braveheart? No, okay. Anyway, no, but where all these sidekicks are put together, these established heroes, and I thought what you said was very cool. That it's like, but it wasn't until they created these characters sort of for the team, Cyborg, Starfire, Beast Boy, that it really congeals into its own
super
thing.
popular thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of those characters, like Beast Boy, was in Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for him to kind of gain this spotlight from joining the Teen Titans also serves to, that's what is a good thing about that team.
Yeah.
When I started reading the Teen Titans, Dick was already gone. Well, technically not true. It was in the 2000s when Tim Drake was leading the team. And that's when they introduced Superboy and Wonder Girl. But simultaneously, they did, I think it was just called Titans, and it was led by Nightwing and the original team as adults. So at the same time, it was like, here's the Teen Titans, and also here's Titans.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I entered, like, reading the comics with these characters.
So you were reading like the new Teen Titans, but there was also Titans.
Yeah. with my boy Nightwing over there leading the original team as adults.
It gets confusing only in this small way, which is that like there's like 3 teams at DC that are like form this weird Celtic knot because it's Titans, Teen Titans, and Outsiders.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of like cross-pollination and stuff like that. Overall, that's been really cool though.
Right, but most of them came from Teen Titans.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like a school in a way. It's like you have to start in preschool, which is Teen Titans.
Yeah.
And then you go on to being Titans once you graduate. But if you're really weird, like Ravager and stuff like that, you're going to go on the Outsiders.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're too weird to be in the Teen Titans tower.
It's like that. It's
Or
like
you
that.
could join the Outlaws with Jason.
That's right.
Which it's for the characters that like to murder.
Outsiders is like that alternative school. We're like guys that stab people and girls that got pregnant.
Oh my god.
or Katana. Okay.
But yeah, so the Teen Titans currently are being led by Damien, so I haven't been reading it.
Why is that?
Damien is my least favorite. He's Noah's favorite, guys, and it should be illegal. Anyway, another point I wanted to mention about the Teen Titans in conclusion was that the media adaptions, I feel, are kind of unique in team franchises. Like, I know the Avengers have the live action and the Justice League has all of their shows, but the Teen Titans have a whole bunch of media adaptions. My introduction into comics basically was the Teen Titans television show. I know I've mentioned that before. Teen Titans Go is currently on, and it's obviously like inferior to that original show, but the target audience is younger.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's not the original one was a little more serious, I guess. There was there's definitely moments of outrageousness.
God, there's some dark themes.
Yeah. And the Teen Titans Go was just
SpongeBob.
It's like the Lego movies, but animated.
Yeah. Do you guys not think, because you're SpongeBob fans, do you not see a SpongeBob connection? Is that just me?
The humor is actually kind of quirky in Titans Go.
It feels like the jokes work in a similar way, and they're very
it's
cute.
like if you're an adult watching, I get it. The kids won't, but I see.
Yeah, no, and it's great writing anyway. So.
Yeah, no, Titans Go has a bad rep because people view it as a replacement for the original show, but
a lot of people see it as a downgrade.
Yeah, exactly. But if you can include Young Justice in this little group too. Because technically it's called Young Justice, not Titans or Teen Titans. But a lot of the characters that are on Young Justice, in the first season at least, are, part of the Titans team.
It's kind of like just another offshoot team.
Yeah.
Like it's like the newer Teen Titans, I guess. So
yeah.
And God, Young Justice might be my favorite animated comic book based series.
I really love Young Justice too, and I'm so excited it's coming back.
The writing is so dense. The storylines they develop over such a long period of time. The fact that they made Sportsmaster cool.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I really like that Young Justice, they give spotlights to like kind of obscure characters. I feel like the original Teen Titans show that I grew up on focused on like the core characters, the core team, but Young Justice spotlights some really random obscure characters.
And they're not afraid to include the big guns.
Yeah.
Like Black Manta and Superman, Batman, all of them.
I'm currently rewatching Young Justice actually, and
it's so good.
The smartest thing about that show for me is the way that they have the adult characters in it, where they exist, they're paid reverence to and everything like that, but they're definitely not the focus.
Yeah.
So like Captain Marvel and Superman and Batman are floating around somewhere. They pop in every once in a while, but they sort of fade into the distance so that you can really focus on the team and everything like that.
Well, they pop in to ground them.
Yeah, absolutely.
For saving everybody.
Batman's awesome on that show, by the way.
Yeah, he's the one in charge of actually giving them the mission.
He's like,
so
he's like, all the hostages are dead, but you did good. It's really good. And I think what Noah was saying, the idea that they handled, or no, I guess you both said it in your own way, that they took obscure characters and they really it's because that show is written by fans. I'm positive.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they just know what's so cool about each character. So they can do a 2-minute like sort of thing, and it's like, they get Captain Cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see you.
Yeah.
Well, and I would be remiss to not mention, I'm giving Noah a look, guys.
A remissful look.
Yep. The Titans show that's coming on DC Universe currently. How much I hate it and how much Noah loves it. I'm picking a fight right now, but it's not good.
We have to have a cage match episode about this.
I can do this.
I'll referee. Is
that fair though? Can you be bipolar?
No, because I'm more on Noah's side. I do like it, but I'm not in love with it, so I get where you're coming from.
Oh my God, as a writer, it's so bad. But anyway, I mentioned the 3 good iterations of the Teen Titans and the 1 bad one currently going on. So who should I throw it to now,
guys? Is it me?
Yeah.
Do you want to defend the Titans real quick?
Nope, I am saving all of that.
Nice.
For a cage match.
I can take you.
I will be nice and cordial in this moment. It's my turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who did you pick?
So I picked a team. I'm very much a Magic fan in Marvel and DC. So I picked the one that I love that they started doing relatively recently, which is Justice League Dark. And it's becoming more of a household name, and definitely up there in my favorites of all time team ups. But it was made in 2011. It's crazy to think not that long ago that this team was here. A lot of people say that this team first appeared in Alan Moore's Swamp Thing in issue 49 or 50 or so, because a lot of these characters that are in that team kind of teamed up then, but were quickly dispersed after it. It just, whatever the story had to do with
So it was like teasing.
Yeah. So, like I said, I love magic in these universes. And
Barry the Scientist.
Yeah, but he's magical to me. No, but I love how they handle it. You have Marvel that does a completely different take on magic. You have DC that does a completely take on magic as well. But Justice League Dark was a team that was formed for situations that the Justice League can't handle. So if you think about the Justice League, none of them are magical. None of them are based in magic, get their powers from magic. I mean, there's some weird blurred lines there. But, I mean, if a big magical catastrophe was sweeping the world, what are they going to do except for...
Punch it?
Yeah. Yeah, punch it.
They're usually pretty lost.
Yeah, and they are. And that's why this team got formed. So this team consists of Constantine, Madame Xanadu, Deadman, Shade the Changing Man, and Zatanna.
I love Zatanna.
Zatanna is one of my favorite characters, and she is
She's
badass.
Cool. Yep. I love her aesthetic. It's so cool.
Yeah, and she looks like a magician, a literal show magician, and she is a show magician, so that can actually do magic. But she's really cool to kind of speak to Zatanna in case not many people know who she is. She's a magician, but she says her spells backwards. So she'll say the name of whatever she's doing backwards. And the reason why she does that, it was said in a couple of comics that she does that because magic requires a lot of focus. And for her to focus, she has to say it backwards. So try to say a sentence backwards.
I can't. I already know. I'm not going to embarrass myself.
It requires an extreme amount of focus.
Yeah.
I know. I don't. I think in backward sentences. I have to say them normal so you understand.
So just like whenever she talks backwards and I don't understand it, half the time.
Correct.
When you talk, that's what I hear.
Correct.
I'm just kidding.
No, he's not.
Yeah, but that team. So you have Deadman, Constantine, Zatanna, Madame Xanadu, Shade the Changing Man, all of these characters in it. They're so obscure.
I feel like Constantine is pretty popular, but I don't really know anyone else aside from Zatanna.
He had a weird cult following.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. He's a great character in his Hellblazer comic. But he's getting a resurgence. He's definitely becoming more popular. Not sadly, but the TV show of his got canceled. But what I think they did that was really cool is that same actor and character popped up in Arrow and Flash. So he's still around. Yeah. He's still floating around. They're like,
hey guys.
Yeah. And that's how he's in the comics.
Yeah.
Where it's like he kind of dips in and dips out for the most part.
Yeah, he has his own run now. And it's very self-contained. You'll see some of these characters, like I mentioned in Justice League Dark, pop up in his comic, but he deals with demons. That is his main thing. He deals with demons and magic. He's a con man. He's an asshole, but he's great and has a huge heart.
That's why people love him.
And that's kind of his appeal, that like it's not his vast Dr. Fate level powers that he solves problems. It's that he's a tricky fucker.
Yeah.
And that it's like some poker cheat. Yeah. Learned a little bit of magic. And
I like how he's so unassuming.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if you watch the Justice League Dark animated movie that they came out with.
I was going to ask you how you liked that one.
Oh, I loved it. It's different than the comic. So they based it off of the comic that came out in 2011. It's different only in that some of the characters that are in it aren't staple Justice League Dark members. So you have Etrigan. I love Etrigan so much. Yeah. I wish he was a
permanent part.
Yeah, but he pops up every now and then because his demon deals with magic. And he's part of the Demon Knights and all that. So
I think Jason Blood is a bit of a mage too.
Yes. Yeah, he is. But anyway, so you have those characters that pop in and out, but the Justice League Dark movie is really good. You get a sense of what the team's about. Right off the bat, the Justice League is dealing with something they have no idea how to deal with. They can't just punch this problem. And so they get Zatanna and Constantine and all these people to kind of figure it out. And that's essentially what Justice League Dark is. I think it's such a cool facet to the universe and adding this team and also just expanding this other side of this world that you don't see as much in the Justice League comics or any of the comics. And also, it gives them a chance to have a comic. I mean, most of these characters, with the exception of Hellblazer, Madame Xanadu, Shade the Changing Man.
Yeah.
I mean, Zatanna, none of them have their own runs, but this gives them an opportunity to have their own comic run. Recently with Rebirth, they came back. I love this team so much more than the first team. You have Wonder Woman. Crazy to think Wonder Woman's in it, but she deals with magic all the time.
Interesting.
Zatanna, obviously.
Yay!
Swamp Thing. I love Swamp Thing so much.
I feel like you only chose this team so you could inadvertently talk about Swamp Thing.
He's getting his own TV show.
Oh
I'm so excited. But yeah, you have Zatanna, Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Man-Bat, John Constantine, and Detective Chimp.
It's characters that aren't just sorcerers.
Yes.
That's what's cool. They're like touched by magic.
Yes.
They exist in that. DC was smart about this in a way I think Marvel hasn't caught up to yet, because not just magical using characters, there's plenty of that in Marvel, but that it's this entire like branch of DC Comics.
Yes.
And the magical world.
Yeah, and that's why he almost knocked over that lamp.
Yeah.
But no, that's why I like that team, because they have this. So all the magic and everything is really explained and focused in this, while Justice League can go punch something in outer space.
Yeah.
Because you have all this other supernatural stuff going on. And I love how they bring these weird, obscure characters like Detective Chimp, which I have such a soft spot for him. He's so sweet. But he's such a weird character. Yeah. He's a chimp that dresses up like Sherlock Holmes, but is extremely smart. He can use a sword like nobody's business.
Oh my gosh.
Which is magical.
Right, but that's
a primate with a sword.
But that's why I love this team, because it's so out there. It's so diverse. You have all this stuff going on. And I like how they brought Wonder Woman into it, because most of her stuff does deal with magic. It's gods and all that stuff, but it's based in magic. So what other better brute force to put in there if they do need to punch something than Wonder Woman?
Also not a bad idea to put a major player in the book.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that might have been kind of their downfall, because Justice League Dark didn't last that long. And I think because it's such obscure characters, these characters are fantastic and great, but you have to have a draw.
Yeah.
And I think Constantine and Zatanna might have been their biggest draw with that. But I mean, Zatanna doesn't have her own comic. So if you've never read it before, you're like, okay, this girl looks weird. And she speaks weird.
Looks weird.
Well, no, but somebody that doesn't know the character, I love the way she looks. Her top hat is great.
Well, oh, yeah. But, and striking as hell. Like, just, you know exactly who that is when you,
Yeah, and Constantine, his comic was in Vertigo, I believe.
Originally, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you had fans that were, so it's all over the place, but I think bringing Wonder Woman into it is really great. But yeah, I mean, Justice League Dark it's supernatural. It's the supernatural Justice League.
I have a theory about this, which I think is cool.
Oh no.
About what?
I'm afraid.
About why there's something really cool that works about that team, and I think it's almost arbitrary to magic. It's that it feels like if you take any random quality and you just get all the characters that have that random quality, it'll be such a random assemblage of characters. They'll just be different and various, because that's what comics are like.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, if you did a team where everybody was an amputee, of which there are a lot in comics. Aquaman's lost his hand, Thor's lost his hand, like all this kind of stuff. And you just said, okay, let's put 7 of them together. You would end up with a really just interesting crew of different kinds of characters by doing just, this team's they're all magically related.
Yeah.
There's not much different than Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman, and a chimp with a sword.
Yep.
Like that, you've already mixed it up just by doing it.
And Man-Bat. Don't forget about Man-Bat.
I want to forget about Man-Bat.
He's terrifying.
Yep.
But
I gotta read this just to find out how he's magically related, because originally Langstrom is a scientist.
Yeah,
so this will be cool.
So remember, it's supernatural.
Yeah.
So it's not just magic.
I got you.
It deals with demons and all that other stuff.
And he fits in.
And Man-Bats.
Yeah. And I don't want to talk about stuff that's currently happening, only because I don't want to spoil it or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of give you the team that's just to get you excited about it in case you like Swamp Thing, which I wish Swamp Thing was in more stuff. I wish he had his own comic. What?
He's fantastic.
I love him so much. But yeah, that's Justice League Dark, the supernatural Justice League. So now, Jared, who did you pick for your super duper team up?
I went with the Thunderbolts. There's a lot of you don't know. There's like 5 people losing their mind right now because I said Thunderbolts. They're really excited about it. Justice like lightning. That's their motto. Okay, so here's they got a motto. They also have a cool insignia. It's a lightning bolt. Not a big deal. Has nothing to do with Thor, by the way. That's the same thing. It's fine. Let's not talk about that.
Could they not make a motif that was thunder?
It is. Well, it's easier to see lightning, as it turns out.
It's a cloud that's hitting another cloud. That's thunder.
Yeah, they just have a sound on their chest. Grant Morrison wrote it, and that's why it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Anyway, okay.
Hey.
Well, he's
Everyone's
great.
picking a fight with Noah today.
No, I didn't know. You like Grant? Okay, it's fine.
I do like Grant Morrison.
I mean, I love Grant Morrison, but it's just, he's goddamn ridiculous sometimes.
Him and Tom King and Steve Orlando are my Twitter buddies, man.
Oh, you're friends with Grant Morrison? The coolest thing about Grant Morrison is he's Scottish. And Split was clearly modeled after him. Anyway, moving on.
Get to your team.
Let's cut all this out. I picked the Thunderbolts because they're amazing. So here's the thing. I'm annoyed at how glib people are with when there's a Marvel character or team or concept that's similar to a DC one or vice versa. They say, oh, so in this case, oh, that's Marvel's Suicide Squad. Mm-hmm. So that's not a bad reference. It's not a bad reference point.
So this is Marvel's Suicide Squad.
That's precisely what it's not. Thank you. Also, so here's what's interesting. I think there are pretty distinct differences, such that when you read Thunderbolts, you don't feel like this could be a Suicide Squad story. It doesn't feel that way generally.
They don't have an Amanda Waller.
They don't. So here's how the its origin, and it's always kind of kept this idea. So in the wake of Onslaught, that all the major Marvel characters, except for the X-Men, who are regarded as sort of terrorists in the world, have gone to another dimension and are presumed dead. So a team rises. Yeah, exactly. It's very sad.
Because comics.
A team rises to from those ashes, and that's the Thunderbolts. What we find out in the first issue is that it's, in fact, the Masters of Evil in disguise, led by Baron Zemo. Okay.
Oh, man.
Yes. And we've got a few characters I just want to mention as the sort of team. You've got Atlas, who's the strong guy, Techno/Fixer, who's like the tech dude, Moonstone /Meteorite. So they all have kind of different names that correspond to like their secret identities now as like these new heroes, these fraud heroes or whatever. Mach 1, who used to be the Beetle, and Songbird, who used to be Screaming Mimi, which is the coolest thing in the world. So the plan, as Zemo conceives of it, is that what's going to happen is that they'll be embraced as the new heroes, and they'll be given all these like FBI and CIA codes and facilities and stuff like that, and they'll use that to conquer the world. That's the idea.
Okay.
So did they do this willingly?
Yes, this is Baron Zemo's plot.
Oh, so I guess that is a good distinction to make between that and the Suicide Squad, because the Suicide Squad did it unwillingly.
And this is the point, the whole story, the only thing that it has in common with Suicide Squad is
that the main characters are not great.
Bad guys in some way being good guys.
Yeah.
But that's about it. And so I'll explain. So Baron Zemo decides they're going to pretend to be heroes, and the sort of way this unfolds and the way it's worked ever since is they start to like it. And that's the difference. They're, rather than be some sort of like co-op team, they're a public front team that's trying to be good. And, I don't want to spoil it entirely, but this is sort of the principle. Most of the team goes against Zemo and decides, no, we're actually going to be good, because they're they're applauded for being, it's almost like a nature versus nurture thing here. Like, man, if the villains had been treated like good people and given positive encouragement, maybe they would have been good people. Thunderbolts just takes that conceit seriously.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, people actually like us now. I like this attention.
Yes. I like helping people.
And most of them have a certain amount of empathy. There is diversity amongst the cast, though. Some of them, Moonstone specifically, is still a sociopath. So some of the characters never really completely go along with it in the sense of they're guided by their moral integrity. Some of them are just like, I have loyalty to the team itself because this is what I've been doing, because this is my inertia. Or they're just sort of like, this is easier then my villain gig, so I'll be that.
Yeah, you can't change brain chemistry like that.
Yeah. So so the team has had a bunch of different incarnations, and I have to tell people, anybody listening, there have been over a period of time straight up just changes to not just the main makeup, but the concept itself. I think they've been kind of not so great. It's always been Marvel's attempt of like villains being sort of good.
Yeah.
And another trend that's common in the Thunderbolts thing, and this has been going on since 1997. So we've got a good like 20, 25 years of history at this point, somewhere in there. Is that after Zemo left, Hawkeye takes over the team.
Interesting.
Because Hawkeye started as villain, right? He's a circus act who fought Iron Man.
Don't make fun of circus people.
I would never do that. Their union
Dick
is
Grayson.
I'm not. Yeah, it's true. And so he kind of shows them the ropes. Later on, this team is revamped as prisoners who are getting another shot. Some of the old team members like Mach 1 / the Beetle and Songbird stay on the team, but they go and to freshen up, go to I think the Raft, which is Marvel's prison, and get some other characters in. Luke Cage heads up the team because Luke started as a prisoner as well, right? And so, but it has a little bit more of a Suicide Squad feeling in that they're still kind of technically prisoners.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only one I've really ever read in comics was Songbird, and it's because I was following Luke Cage, and she appeared in some of the books.
Songbird is one of the breakout characters of the series what's really interesting about this is just see how these characters change, because some of the characters, like Moonstone, she never stops being Moonstone. She changes in her appearance, but then slowly goes back, and she's been a villain more often than a hero, even post Thunderbolts.
So what is her motivation to be in it? Is it because she had to, or?
No, she was originally just really a fan of Baron Zemo's plot. So if you Carla Sofin, which is Moonstone's character, she's a deeply manipulative psychiatrist. That's where and then she got in contact with this alien Moonstone, which is related to the Kree in a certain way. I can't remember exactly how, but it gave her all these wild powers, super strength, intangibility, flying.
That's what a psychologist needs.
Yeah. So her deal is just manipulating the shit out of everybody. But So what's cool about her, though, incidentally, is because she is always at her heart pretty evil. Later on in the stories, when the Thunderbolts were a more kind of evil team, she fit right in. During the Dark Reign, when Norman Osborn was in control of everything, they formed later on the Dark Avengers, which was a bunch of villains pretending to be literally masquerading as we had Bullseye pretending to be Hawkeye, Doc and pretending to be Wolverine.
That seems to happen quite a bit in Marvel, where it's like, oh, these are heroes. Nope. That's actually Magneto.
JK.
That is, Marvel does it that way, and DC's idea is generally like, we'll just do a dystopian universe where the good guys are bad.
Or just make it to where the bad guys are the only ones left standing, like we talked about in the last one.
So I think it's a really, it's an interesting series. One, it was just started with this really good run by Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley. More on that later. But so it was just a solid 50 or 60 issues of just really good meat and potatoes superhero stories. But sometimes I say an expression that Noah's never heard before.
He's never heard meat and potatoes?
No, I have, but it was just the line, like a solid superhero meat and potatoes. I don't know. It just sounds like a line of special edition meal I don't know.
It's really good. It's delicious and savory.
And super.
Yeah, so anyway, really good storytelling. And then the concept, I think, was strong enough that it just carried through. Yeah.
I've never heard of them, so I'm learning.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. One of the reasons I wanted to spotlight this team is that they have this relatively consistent history, but they've never, so unlike the Teen Titans where they haven't had adaptation. So if you're reading the Marvel Universe relatively consistently, you'll run into the Thunderbolts. You might even become a fan, but it's only in comics that you're really going to get a sense of who they are.
They're a relatively kind of new team, too, because you said 1997.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still pretty...
In comic years.
Yeah, in comic years, because, I mean, there's been teams and characters have been out since the 40s.
Oh, absolutely. So, and another thing that was kind of interesting about that, it's sort of like when people say, like, the United States is only 200 and something years old, but it's like, yeah, but it's really connected to all this British and European history beforehand.
Yeah.
Similarly, the Thunderbolts are really, or at their beginning, the masters of evil. And then as the different iterations have happened, it's been different famous villains. So while the team itself only has this like 20-year history, the characters that they use have been out since
established characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's also another really cool way to just like go into villain psychology, because, you know, now it's these characters and how, like, honestly, the Beetle is a Spider-Man villain, and he's kind of a B-level one. And how much he is annoyed by Spider-Man, even as a hero. He's a good guy now. He's Mach 1, so he's like basically he's similar to Iron Man, just in the shape of a jet, like a person wearing a jet sort of thing. He's really cool.
So Transformer.
A little bit. It's more like Iron Man, but in the shape of a jet. Anyway, so, but he's still got this awful pet peeve for Spider-Man.
I feel like that happens a lot with Peter Parker, though. Like Venom too. It's just like, you in particular don't like,
because he punches you in the face and then jokes about it.
That's true. Not only does he hurt you physically, he hurts you emotionally.
Yeah, you get punched.
Damn witty kids.
You get punched in the nose, and you're like, "Can you just take this moment seriously? I'm going to go to jail." You understand that?
My life is ruined.
This is 5 to 10. That's just
Oh my god.
armed. It's like the scorpion tail is a deadly weapon. I'm going to go to. Can we just? At least Captain America like looks at you mean.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting team. I kind of like the diversity that we had going on. Like some of them were sprouted from a main team. One of them handles a specific type, and then the other one was, these were the ones that the heroes fought. Those teams fought, and now they're a team themselves. So I think that's
it's like trying to be redemptive.
Yeah.
I like that. It's oh, and I'll say this: the one difference between this and the Suicide Squad is that, for the most part, the Thunderbolts are really trying. Whereas, rather, like you mentioned, rather than in the Suicide Squad, where they really are, if they're not awful, they remain sort of cynical, and most of them are doing it just because they're being extorted.
Yeah.
In this case, it's really, you get the stories where, they're trying to be good and still messing it up or falling short or don't
That's
have
so
the
sad.
courage. Yeah. I mean, so another way you get stories about how awesome the Avengers are, because it's like, it's not easy to do that. If you're more cynically motivated, if you're like used to being a crook, and then it's like, you have to almost die. You get that, right? Yeah. So it's really cool.
That's interesting. All right. So for the end of the episode, like always, comic book recommendations.
Yes.
I guess I'll kick it off. So with mine, since Justice League Dark essentially formed in 2011, there's not much to go on with it, so I'll just recommend that one. I mean, the 2011 run, Justice League Dark #1, or Volume 1, it was written by Jeff Lemire, which, if you don't know who Jeff Lemire is, you probably do, or if the name sounds familiar. He's been doing the Thanos run. He did Descenders, which is a kind of independent one. He also did Gideon Falls. So really popular ones. He's a great writer. Definitely look into it. And then I'll recommend the movie that came out in 2016.
It is a good movie.
It is a really good movie. You'll see all these characters in it, and then some new ones. Like Etrigan's in it, which I love Etrigan. He's so cool. But yeah, those are my 2 recommendations. Kayla.
Yes. Well, Teen Titans has a lot of history. I have the exact opposite problem as Noah. If you want to be a purist, I would go back to Wolfman and Perez's The New Teen Titans. Like I mentioned earlier, that's the one with the Judas contract. It's a very, very good.
So good.
Yes. For something a little bit more modern, Titans Together Forever, where it's the original crew coming back as adults. So it's really beautiful, really sweet.
It's really well done, too. The artwork is fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm an art snob, as we know, so that's important to me. But another beautiful thing about the Teen Titans is that it's super accessible in a lot of different mediums. So if you want to start watching that Teen Titans show or Young Justice like we were talking about, that's also a really good way to get into the team. So, yeah. Jared.
Thunderbolts. Okay, so actually kind of cool thing, just when I was looking at this, most of the series took place in one long series, like one long volume, went up to 174 issues, which I think shows that it was smolder. I collected most of those in real time, and they were really good. It stayed good. So I wanted to direct you in just pieces of those. The first one you should check out is just they've put it in trade. It's just the first, I think, 6 issues. It's by Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley. Great team. They go up to 34, and then Fabian Nicieza takes over writing up and easily into the 60s. I would recommend all that, but like just the first 6 to 12 issues, great. Second recommendation, also in that run, is it starts in issue 110. It's 2007, Warren Ellis, a guy who's just a fantastic writer, one of my favorites, very dark while still being really, what's the word, like, not Grant Morrison-y. Anyway, he and Mike Deodato Jr. take over responsibility for the art, and they revamped the team a little bit. It's got some new characters. And it's really, really compelling stuff. So
I think Warren Ellis is the one that's writing the Castlevania series on Netflix right now.
Sounds
so
just like
I
him.
love him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He also wrote an album with Nick Cave, of all things.
Did he really?
Diverse writer.
Whoa.
Yep. Well, thanks for listening. Go find your superhero team, guys.
Yeah. All right. And also, like always, guys, the episode show notes and links to everything will be on the blog, which you can find the direction to that website on any of our social medias. Make sure you check that out. And also, if you subscribe to us on iTunes, any of those other things, you'll get updates. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, because I think we're pretty fun on that. So
we're hilarious.
Yes, it's a lot of fun, and we love to engage with people. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.